My name is Miranda Wilson, and at 34, I built a successful small business only to watch my family try to tear it all down over my grandmother's inheritance. I never imagined my own blood relatives would drag me to court, accusing me of manipulation and fraud. But they underestimated what I had in my possession. One document. That's all it took for the judge's eyes to widen before police officers came rushing through those courtroom doors. If you're watching this from somewhere where family means everything to you, hit like and subscribe. You'll want to hear how I discovered the truth behind my grandmother's fortune and why police officers came running into that courtroom when I revealed just one piece of paper. Growing up, my grandmother Eleanor was my safe harbor in a storm. While my parents worked long hours to make ends meet, I spent countless afternoons at her charming two-story house with a wraparound porch and garden that smelled of rosemary and lavender. She would bake snickerdoodle cookies that filled the kitchen with cinnamon warmth while telling me stories about coming to America with nothing but a suitcase and big dreams. Eleanor Matthews arrived from Scotland in 1955 with just $20 sewn into the lining of her coat. She worked 3 jobs simultaneously, waitressing in the mornings, bookkeeping in the afternoons, and cleaning offices at night. Within 5 years, she had saved enough to open a small fabric shop. That humble beginning grew into Matthews Textile Enterprises, a company that eventually supplied materials to major clothing manufacturers across the country. Success isn't about being lucky, Miranda, she would tell me, her blue eyes twinkling. It's about seeing opportunities where others see obstacles. By the time I was born, Grandma Eleanor was a respected businesswoman. She had outlived my grandfather by almost 20 years, but never remarried. Thomas was my one great love, she would say, showing me their faded wedding photo she kept by her bedside. Unlike the rest of my family, I didn't see Eleanor as a bank account or status symbol. I genuinely enjoyed her company. While my Aunt Patricia only visited when she needed money for her latest cosmetic procedure, and Uncle Raymond showed up to borrow cash for his sure-thing investments that never panned out, I came by every Sunday just to spend time with her. When I was 16, my parents moved 2 hours away for new job opportunities. I stayed with Eleanor to finish high school, and our bond deepened further. She taught me everything about business, negotiation tactics, profit margins, employee management, all the things that would later help me establish my own marketing consultancy. You have the Matthews business sense, she would say proudly. The others just want the Matthews money. The others were precisely the problem. Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, had always been jealous of Eleanor's success. Patricia married Bradley, a real estate agent who never quite reached the success he bragged about. Their son, my cousin Trevor, inherited his mother's sense of entitlement without inheriting any work ethic. By 30, Trevor had gambled away 2 trust funds and was constantly asking Eleanor to bail him out of debt. Uncle Raymond, Eleanor's youngest son, had battled alcoholism for decades. His business ventures failed spectacularly: the sports bar that closed in 6 months, the car dealership that went bankrupt, the tech startup that never started. Each failure was followed by a tearful visit to Eleanor, who would reluctantly write yet another check while lecturing him about responsibility. As Eleanor entered her 80s, her health began to decline. Arthritis made her once nimble fingers stiff and painful. Her eyesight deteriorated, making it difficult to read the financial journals she loved. When she fell and fractured her hip at 84, I made the decision to temporarily put my growing business on hold and move into her home to care for her. "You don't need to do this," she protested. "You have your own life. You are my life too," I told her simply. And I meant it. For 2 years, I managed her medications, drove her to doctor appointments, and helped her navigate the stairs. We established new rituals: Monday movie nights with classic films, Wednesday afternoon drives to the lake, and Saturday mornings in her garden where I became her hands, planting the flowers she could no longer tend herself. During this time, the rest of the family rarely visited. Patricia called occasionally, always steering the conversation toward Eleanor's will. Trevor showed up twice, both times asking for loans. Raymond appeared sporadically, sometimes sober, sometimes not. In her final months, Eleanor became more reflective and occasionally mysterious. "I've made arrangements," she told me one evening as we watched the sunset from her porch. "When the time comes, everything will be clear." "What arrangements?" I asked. She patted my hand. "Just know that I see everything, Miranda. Always have. Don't worry about the vultures. I've made sure they won't get what they don't deserve." At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. I was more concerned with making her comfortable than deciphering cryptic messages. I wish I had asked more questions. It might have prepared me for what was coming. The last coherent conversation we had was about trust. "Money shows people's true colors," she whispered, her voice frail, but her mind still sharp. "Watch carefully who celebrates your success and who resents it. That tells you everything you need to know about their character." Those words would prove prophetic in ways I couldn't imagine. Eleanor passed away peacefully on a Tuesday morning in April. I was holding her hand, reading aloud from Jane Eyre, her favorite novel, when she took one final breath and was gone. The room seemed to empty of something essential the moment she left, as if her remarkable spirit had taken all the light with it. The first 24 hours passed in a blur of tears and phone calls. I contacted the funeral home, called family members, and sat alone in her garden trying to absorb the reality that she was gone. My grief was a physical pain, a hollowness that made it difficult to breathe. The family arrived like a storm front. Patricia swept in with dramatic sobs that stopped suspiciously quickly when she thought no one was watching. Trevor wore a black suit that still had the price tag partially attached, as if he planned to return it after the funeral. Raymond showed up reeking of whiskey and aftershave, his eyes bloodshot. "Such a tragedy," Patricia announced to everyone who would listen at the funeral home. Mother and I were so close. I bit my tongue, remembering the months when Patricia hadn't even called to check on Eleanor's health. The funeral was well attended. Eleanor had been respected in the business community and beloved by her employees. Former workers traveled from across the country to pay their respects. Business associates sent massive flower arrangements. The mayor even made an appearance, speaking briefly about Eleanor's contributions to local charities. Throughout the service, I noticed my family members scanning the room, noting who was important, who represented money or connections. During the eulogy I delivered, Patricia checked her watch 3 times. The reception afterward was held at Eleanor's home. While I was thanking people for coming, I caught Trevor slipping upstairs. 15 minutes later, he reappeared, looking frustrated. When I went up later to get a moment alone, I noticed Eleanor's desk drawers were slightly open and papers appeared disturbed. Later that evening, after most guests had left, I overheard a conversation between Patricia and Raymond in the kitchen. "The will reading is scheduled for Friday," Patricia was saying. "Bradley knows the executor. Says Eleanor was worth at least $15 million.
Jesus, Raymond whispered.
I had no idea it was that much. The textile business, real estate holdings, investments, it adds up. Question is, how much is Miranda getting? She's been playing the devoted granddaughter routine pretty convincingly. Their words stung like physical blows. Routine. I had put my own life on hold out of love for Eleanor, not for financial gain. Friday arrived with tense anticipation. The family gathered at the office of Eleanor's longtime attorney, Gerald Fisher, a distinguished man in his 60s who had handled her legal affairs for decades. He seemed particularly kind to me, offering condolences before getting down to business. "Before I begin," Gerald said, "I want to note that Eleanor was of completely sound mind when she made her final amendments to this will 6 months ago. She understood exactly what she was doing." Patricia and Raymond exchanged glances. The will started with small bequests, jewelry to distant relatives, artwork to friends, charitable donations. Then came the bombshell. To my granddaughter, Miranda Wilson, who showed me true familial love and loyalty, I leave my controlling interest in Matthews Textile Enterprises, my primary residence and all its contents, and the sum of $12 million from my investment accounts. The room erupted. Patricia jumped to her feet, face contorted with rage. This is outrageous. She was manipulated. Raymond knocked over a water glass. Miranda convinced her to cut us out. Mother would never do this. Trevor's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. That's our family money. Gerald raised his hands for quiet. There are provisions for other family members. Those provisions were significantly smaller, $200,000 each to Patricia, Raymond, and Trevor, plus some jewelry and personal mementos. This is Eleanor's decision, made with clear intention, Gerald finished firmly. We'll contest this, Patricia hissed at me. You won't get away with this. Later that afternoon, I returned to Eleanor's house, now legally my house, and found the back door unlocked. Inside, drawers had been opened, books pulled from shelves, and cushions displaced. Someone had been searching for something. In Eleanor's study, I noticed a small safe built into the wall behind a painting I'd never seen moved before. It was locked, and I had no idea where to find the key. As I left the house that evening, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper. In block letters it read, "Give up what isn't yours or you'll regret it." Standing in the darkening driveway, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. This was only the beginning. 3 months after Eleanor's funeral, the family conflict had transformed from simmering resentment to outright warfare. Matthews Textile Enterprises continued to operate under the interim management team Eleanor had established before her death, but transitioning to my leadership was proving difficult amid the legal challenges. My attempts to reason with family members individually had failed spectacularly. I invited Patricia to lunch at her favorite upscale restaurant, hoping to find common ground. I know you're upset about the will, I began carefully, but I'm sure we can work something out that honors what Grandma wanted while still. Save it. Patricia cut me off, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her water glass. You think I don't know what you did? 2 years playing nurse while filling her head with lies about us? Eleanor would never have cut me out if you hadn't poisoned her against her own daughter. That's not what happened. We have witnesses, Miranda. People who saw how you isolated her, controlled who she could see. She leaned forward, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. My meeting with Trevor at a local coffee shop went even worse. You know I'm in debt, he said immediately, not bothering with pleasantries. Grandmother knew that too. She would have wanted you to help me. I'm happy to help you find financial counseling, I offered. His laugh was bitter. I don't need counseling. I need $2 million to clear what I owe. People are looking for me, Miranda. Dangerous people. That sounds like a police matter. Give me what I deserve from the inheritance and this all goes away, he said, rising to leave. Otherwise, I hope you can live with what happens next. Uncle Raymond's confrontation was the most public and embarrassing. He showed up at my marketing consultancy office clearly intoxicated at 2 p.m. My assistant tried to stop him, but he pushed past her into a client meeting I was conducting. Here she is, he announced to my startled clients. The manipulative little schemer who stole our family legacy. Security escorted him out, but not before he shouted accusations about me taking advantage of an elderly woman. The clients were understanding, but word spread quickly in our small business community. Soon I began hearing disturbing reports. Trevor had been telling anyone who would listen that I had medically sedated Eleanor to get her to sign the new will. Patricia spread rumors that I had prevented family from visiting during Eleanor's final months. Raymond told his drinking buddies that I had threatened Eleanor, saying I would abandon her care if she didn't change her will in my favor. The whispers affected my business. 2 clients canceled contracts. An industry dinner invitation was rescinded. Former friends became distant, clearly uncomfortable with the controversy. Then came the legal notice. The family had hired Marcus Blackwell, one of the most expensive and aggressive attorneys in the state. His firm specialized in contesting wills, particularly those involving substantial assets. The 12-page document claimed undue influence, diminished capacity, and coercion, all attacking Eleanor's mental competence and my character simultaneously. Finding legal representation proved unexpectedly difficult. 3 attorneys declined to take my case after initial consultations, citing conflicts of interest or simply that the case was too complicated. I later discovered that Patricia's husband Bradley had connections throughout the local legal community and had been making calls. When I finally found Sofia Hernandez, it felt like divine intervention. She was new to town, having recently relocated her practice from Chicago, and had no connections to my family. They're using classic intimidation tactics, Sofia explained during our first meeting. The difficulty finding representation, the community whisper campaign, the escalating threats, it's all designed to make you give up before we even get to court. Is their case strong? I asked, terrified of the answer. Not based on what you've told me, she said. But contests are unpredictable. Judges have significant discretion, and Blackwell is very good at creating compelling narratives, even from flimsy evidence. A formal settlement offer arrived the following week. In exchange for dropping all claims of misconduct against me, the family would allow me to keep the house and a small portion of the money, approximately $1 million. They would take control of the business and the remaining $11 million. This is their first offer, Sofia explained. They're hoping you'll be scared enough to take it. I'm not giving them anything, I said firmly. This isn't about the money. It's about honoring what Eleanor wanted. While organizing Eleanor's home office, I discovered financial records revealing an alarming pattern. Over the past decade, Patricia had borrowed nearly $300,000 from Eleanor. Trevor had received loans totaling over $500,000, none repaid. Raymond had been given nearly $1 million for his failed business ventures. They were already getting their inheritance, I told Sofia, showing her the records. Eleanor was supporting them while she was alive. This is helpful, Sofia said, adding the documents to our growing file. It establishes a pattern of financial dependence and could explain their motivation for challenging the will. As the court date approached, my isolation intensified. People I'd known my entire life crossed the street to avoid talking to me. The family's narrative was winning in the court of public opinion. One evening, I received a text from an unknown number. We know about the safe. Give us what's inside, or else. I changed the locks on the house the next day. With the court date looming just 6 weeks away, I threw myself into preparing Eleanor's house for a potential sale, not because I wanted to sell the cherished home, but because Sofia advised me to be ready for any outcome. While sorting through Eleanor's bedroom closet, I found a leather-bound journal tucked inside a hatbox. The journal spanned the last 5 years of Eleanor's life. Her handwriting, progressively shakier as the pages advanced, documented her thoughts, business decisions, and increasingly, her concerns about family members. October 15th, Patricia visited today. Within 10 minutes, she was asking about investing in Bradley's new development project. When I asked for a business plan, she became offended. Don't you trust your own daughter? She asked. Trust has nothing to do with business sense, which Bradley has never demonstrated. December 3rd. Trevor came by. Another gambling debt. I paid it after he broke down crying about threats from his bookie. This is the last time. I've said that before, but I mean it now. He needs to face consequences. February 28th. Raymond was intoxicated at 2 in the afternoon. He knocked over my crystal vase and didn't even notice. When I mentioned rehab again, he stormed out. Later called asking for money to tide him over. I refused. He said I was dead to him. If only Miranda weren't traveling for business this week. Her visits are my only true joy lately. The most disturbing entries came from the year before her death, May 10th. I've made a decision. Miranda will inherit the bulk of my estate. The others have received more than enough over the years with nothing to show for it. Patricia will be furious. I need to take precautions. June 17th. Met with Gerald to update my will. Also spoke with Martin at the bank. He's documenting all the loans to family members. I've instructed him to prepare a complete financial history going back 10 years. September 3rd. Patricia brought Bradley over unexpectedly. While she distracted me in the kitchen, he was alone in my study for 15 minutes. My desk drawer was slightly ajar afterward. I checked my financial documents. Nothing missing, but something feels wrong. The final entry, dated just 2 weeks before her death, sent a chill through me. March 22nd. I've gathered everything together. The key is on my necklace, the one with the small silver locket Thomas gave me. Miranda will know what to do when the time comes. I've seen how they look at me now, not as their mother or grandmother, but as a bank account they're waiting to access. Only Miranda sees me. I'm so tired. The journal was a goldmine of evidence, but it also broke my heart. Eleanor had been more aware of the family's machinations than I'd realized. That evening, my phone rang with an unknown number. Miranda Wilson, a woman's voice asked. Yes. This is Nancy Pelletier. I was your grandmother's home health nurse during her last year. I remembered Nancy, a kind, efficient woman who had come 3 times a week to help with Eleanor's physical therapy. I've been following the news about the will contest, she continued. There's something you should know. Your Uncle Raymond and cousin Trevor visited your grandmother the day before she changed her will. I overheard them threatening her. Threatening her how? I asked, my hand tightening on the phone. They said if she didn't adjust her estate plans to be more fair, they would have her declared incompetent and take control of her affairs. Your grandmother was frightened but resolute. After they left, she called her attorney immediately. Nancy agreed to provide a sworn statement, another crucial piece of evidence. The next day, I met with Martin Greenberg, Eleanor's accountant for over 20 years. He arrived at our meeting with a thick folder. Eleanor asked me to prepare this about 8 months before she passed, he explained, sliding the folder across the table. She said you might need it someday. Inside was a detailed financial history showing suspicious patterns. Large withdrawals from Eleanor's accounts frequently coincided with family visits. Credit card charges appeared for expensive restaurants and boutiques in the days after Patricia's visits. Cash withdrawals matched the dates of Trevor's desperate appearances. She knew? I asked, stunned by the meticulous documentation. Eleanor didn't miss much, Martin said with a sad smile. She was conflicted about documenting this. She didn't want to think badly of her family, but she wanted the truth preserved. That night, I remembered Eleanor's journal mention of a necklace key. I had seen her wear a silver locket throughout my childhood, but hadn't thought about its whereabouts. After hours of searching, I found it in a jewelry box in her bedside table drawer. The locket contained a tiny key. With trembling hands, I went to the safe in her study. The key fit perfectly. Inside were several USB drives, a folder of documents, and a letter addressed to me in Eleanor's handwriting. For Miranda, use if necessary. The USB drives contained audio recordings Eleanor had made. Somehow, she had managed to record conversations with family members without their knowledge. Patricia demanding money for a vacation home. Trevor begging for cash to pay off bookies. Raymond angrily insisting he deserved an early inheritance. Most shocking was a recording of Patricia and Bradley discussing plans to contest the will nearly a year before Eleanor's death. When the old lady finally kicks it, we'll claim Miranda manipulated her. Bradley's voice said clearly, "It doesn't matter if it's true. By the time the court's figured out, she'll be willing to settle just to end the nightmare." The document folder contained loan agreements signed by family members, none of which had been repaid. There were also photos. Trevor coming out of a casino the day after claiming he needed money for medical bills. Patricia wearing a new diamond necklace purchased with Eleanor's credit card. Raymond selling furniture from Eleanor's lake house that he claimed had been gifted to him. Most damning was a private investigator's report Eleanor had commissioned. The PI had documented Patricia and Bradley's lavish spending despite claimed financial hardships, Trevor's connections to known bookies, and Raymond's pattern of pawning family heirlooms. Eleanor had assembled an airtight case proving the family's true motivations. I called Sophia immediately. After reviewing everything, she was cautiously optimistic. "This changes our strategy completely," she said. "We need to be careful about how we present this in court. The recordings might not be admissible depending on consent laws, but the financial documents and photos absolutely are." The night before the court date, I was organizing the evidence when I heard a noise downstairs. Someone was trying to force the back door. I called the police, who arrived within minutes, but the intruder had fled. A crowbar lay abandoned near the door, and the wall safe in the study had scratches around its edges. They knew about the evidence, and they were desperate to get it before I could use it in court. The county courthouse was an imposing limestone building with marble columns and high ceilings that made every footstep echo. I arrived early with Sophia, my stomach churning with anxiety despite our substantial evidence. The gravity of the situation hit me as we passed through security. My own family was trying to destroy me to get money they hadn't earned. Patricia, Bradley, Raymond, and Trevor arrived together, a unified front in coordinated navy blue attire that screamed, respectable grieving family. Patricia had even added a prop, a handkerchief embroidered with Eleanor's initials that she dabbed at dry eyes for maximum effect. Marcus Blackwell, their attorney, exuded confidence in his three-piece suit. He carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary and was accompanied by two younger associates who scurried around him like pilot fish. Judge Catherine Wells entered the courtroom precisely at 9 o'clock. A woman in her early 60s with silver-streaked hair and penetrating gray eyes, she had a reputation for being thorough and immune to theatrical performances. "This court will now hear the case of Matthews' estate contest," she announced. "I've reviewed the filings from both parties. Let me be clear, I'm interested in facts, not emotional appeals or unsubstantiated accusations." Blackwell opened with a masterfully crafted narrative portraying Eleanor as a vulnerable elderly woman manipulated by a calculating granddaughter. According to his telling, I had systematically isolated Eleanor from her loving family, turning her against them through constant negative influence. "Your Honor, Miranda Wilson saw an opportunity and seized it," Blackwell said, his voice resonating through the courtroom. "She moved into Mrs. Matthews' home under the guise of providing care, but her real motivation was controlling access to influence the distribution of a substantial estate." Sophia maintained her composure, taking detailed notes while occasionally squeezing my arm reassuringly. Blackwell's parade of witnesses began. A former gardener claimed he'd overheard me telling Eleanor that her children were only interested in her money. The gardener conveniently failed to mention he'd been fired by Eleanor for stealing garden ornaments, a fact Sophia highlighted during cross-examination. Eleanor's hairdresser testified that I had canceled several of Patricia's visits, claiming Eleanor wasn't feeling well. Under Sophia's questioning, she admitted she had no way of knowing if Eleanor was actually ill during those times. The most surprising witness was my ex-boyfriend from college, Daniel, whom I hadn't seen in over a decade. He described me as manipulative and money-focused, claiming I had once said I was waiting for my grandmother's money to solve all my problems. His testimony felt like a physical blow until Sophia revealed during cross-examination that Daniel had recently accepted a job at a company owned by Bradley. A former employee from my marketing firm testified that I had taken extended time off, supposedly, to care for Eleanor but had been seen around town shopping and dining out. She neglected to mention these outings had been with Eleanor, getting her out of the house for enjoyment, something Sophia established by producing receipts showing 2 meals purchased at each venue. During the lunch recess, Trevor approached me in the hallway. "It's not too late to settle," he said, voice low and threatening. "This is only going to get worse for you." "Is that why you paid off my ex-boyfriend to lie about me?" I asked. Something flickered in his eyes, surprised that I knew, perhaps, before he masked it with a sneer. "We're just getting started." The afternoon brought financial experts hired by Blackwell who presented charts suggesting Eleanor's investment decisions had become erratic after I moved in. Sophia's cross-examination revealed they had cherry-picked transactions while ignoring the overall stability of Eleanor's portfolio. By late afternoon, a disturbing pattern emerged in Blackwell's strategy. Character assassination through carefully curated half-truths. Text messages between Eleanor and me were presented with crucial context removed. Photos of Eleanor looking tired were shown as evidence of her declining mental state, while I exerted undue influence. When court adjourned for the day, I felt defeated despite Sophia's assurances that we hadn't yet presented our case. "They're front-loading their strongest arguments," she explained as we walked to her car. "It's a standard tactic. Tomorrow, we start our defense, and that's when we'll introduce Eleanor's evidence." That evening, my phone rang. It was Dr. Howard Fleming, Eleanor's primary physician for the past 15 years. "Miranda, I've been out of the country at a medical conference," he said. "I just heard about the will contest. I want to testify." "About what?" I asked. "I performed Eleanor's cognitive assessments every 3 months during her final 2 years. She was sharp as a tack until the very end. I have all the documented tests. No one could have manipulated her. She was too smart for that." I fell asleep that night clutching Eleanor's locket, drawing strength from the connection to her. Tomorrow would determine whether her final wishes would be honored or overturned. The second day of trial dawned with a sense of foreboding. My family entered the courtroom with subtle smirks, clearly believing victory was within reach. Patricia had upgraded her prop handkerchief to a framed photo of Eleanor that she placed conspicuously on the table before her. Marcus Blackwell began by calling his star witness, Dr. Alastair Jenkins, a geriatric psychiatrist who had never met Eleanor but had reviewed her medical records. "Based on my analysis," Jenkins testified, "Mrs. Matthews exhibited classic signs of cognitive vulnerability in her final years. Memory lapses, confusion about dates, difficulty with financial concepts, these are all consistent with diminished capacity." Sophia's cross-examination was surgical. "Dr. Jenkins, have you spoken with Mrs. Matthews' actual treating physician?" "No, I have not." "So your assessment is based solely on partial medical records provided by the contestant's attorney?" "Yes, but, Dr. Jenkins, are you aware that Mrs. Matthews' actual physician will be testifying later today about cognitive assessments he personally conducted?" Blackwell objected, but the damage was done. Jenkins' credibility had been undermined. Next came Patricia's dramatic testimony. She dabbed at tears while describing her close relationship with Eleanor and her shock at being cut out of the will. "Mother and I spoke daily," Patricia claimed. "She confided in me about everything." Then Miranda moved in, and suddenly Mother didn't want to talk to me anymore. When I did visit, Miranda was always hovering, listening to every word. Sophia's cross-examination revealed Patricia had visited Eleanor exactly 8 times in the 2 years before her death, according to Eleanor's journals and calendar entries. "And during those 8 visits," Sophia continued, "phone records show you called your mother approximately 27 times total. That's far from daily communication, isn't it?" Patricia flushed. "I was busy with charity work." "Charity work like your 3-week spa retreat in Switzerland last year?" Sophia asked, producing photos from Patricia's own social media. The morning progressed with similar revelations. Trevor's gambling debts were exposed. Raymond's history of alcohol-related arrests came to light. By the lunch break, Blackwell looked less confident, while my family members exchanged worried glances. In the afternoon, Dr. Fleming took the stand, presenting clear evidence of Eleanor's cognitive soundness until her death. Eleanor's accountant testified about her continued business acumen. Nancy, the home health nurse, described the threatening visit from Raymond and Trevor. As the day wore on, Judge Wells' expression became increasingly troubled as she took copious notes. The family's case was unraveling, but Blackwell was skilled at damage control, repeatedly emphasizing my financial gain as motive for manipulation. Near the end of the day, Sophia called me to the stand. I testified about my relationship with Eleanor, the care I had provided, and my lack of awareness about the extent of her wealth until after her death. "Miranda," Sophia asked, "did you ever attempt to influence your grandmother's decisions about her will?" "Never," I said firmly. "We barely discussed it. Eleanor was private about financial matters until the very end." Blackwell's cross-examination was aggressive. He presented a photo of me at Eleanor's bank, suggesting I had been accessing her accounts inappropriately. I explained I had been depositing checks for her business because she had difficulty driving. "Isn't it convenient," Blackwell pressed, "that the one person who spent the most time with Mrs. Matthews in her final years is the one who receives the bulk of her $15 million estate?" "I didn't spend time with her to get her money," I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I spent time with her because I loved her." As the day concluded, Judge Wells addressed both parties. "We'll resume tomorrow morning for final evidence and closing arguments. I expect to rule by the end of the day." That night, Sophia and I finalized our strategy. The financial records, journal entries, and witness testimonies had been effective, but we still hadn't played our strongest card. The recordings and investigators' report Eleanor had secured in the safe. "We save it for last," Sophia decided. Maximum impact. The final day began with Blackwell presenting his forensic accountant, who testified about suspicious patterns in Eleanor's finances after I moved in. Sophia's cross-examination quickly established that these patterns were actually consistent with Eleanor's previous spending habits. Patricia took the stand again for what Blackwell called clarifying testimony. Her performance was even more emotional than before, complete with a trembling voice and occasional pauses to compose herself. "My mother would never have wanted our family torn apart like this," she said, looking directly at me with accusation. "Miranda has destroyed our family legacy for her own gain." Judge Wells appeared to be listening intently, occasionally nodding as Patricia spoke. My heart sank. Despite all our evidence, was the judge being swayed by Patricia's performance? After the lunch recess, Sophia announced, "Your Honor, we have one final piece of evidence to present." I approached the bench with a sealed envelope, my hands trembling slightly. Judge Wells accepted it with a questioning look. As she opened it and began reading, her expression transformed from curiosity to shock to grim determination. "Counsel, approach the bench," she ordered. Sophia and Blackwell stepped forward for a hushed conference. Blackwell's face drained of color as he glanced back at my family. Judge Wells addressed the courtroom. "Based on evidence just presented, this court is taking a 15-minute recess. No one is to leave the courtroom." She exited quickly, the envelope clutched in her hand. The document I had provided contained 3 critical pieces of evidence. First, a notarized confession from Bradley, Patricia's husband, written during their divorce proceedings 2 years earlier, a divorce they had reconciled from but which had generated legal documents. In it, Bradley admitted to a conspiracy to pressure Eleanor into changing her will, including plans to have her declared incompetent if she refused. Second, bank records showing systematic theft from Eleanor's accounts using duplicate checks and forged signatures, a scheme orchestrated by Patricia and executed by Trevor. Third, a police report filed by Eleanor 6 months before her death, documenting her concerns about elder financial abuse. She had withdrawn the complaint under family pressure, but the report remained in police records. Most damning was the attached evidence that my family had been planning to place Eleanor in a substandard nursing home against her wishes to gain control of her assets, a plan documented in emails between Patricia and a facility known for its minimal care standards. When Judge Wells returned, she was accompanied by 4 police officers. Based on evidence presented to this court, I am ordering the immediate detainment of Patricia Henderson, Bradley Henderson, Raymond Matthews, and Trevor Henderson for questioning regarding potential elder abuse, financial fraud, and conspiracy. The courtroom erupted. Patricia screamed, "This is ridiculous." Miranda planted that evidence. In her panic, she made a fatal mistake. Those recordings were supposed to be destroyed. Her inadvertent admission silenced the room. She had just confirmed knowledge of evidence she shouldn't have known existed unless she was indeed guilty. Raymond bolted for the door but was quickly intercepted by an officer. Trevor collapsed into his chair, head in his hands. Bradley began frantically whispering to Blackwell, who stepped away with a look of disgust. Judge Wells banged her gavel repeatedly for order. This court finds no merit whatsoever in the contest of Eleanor Matthews' will. The will stands as written, with all assets to be distributed according to her clearly expressed wishes. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. She looked directly at me with unexpected compassion. Ms. Wilson, this court apologizes for the ordeal you have endured. Your grandmother would be proud of how you've defended her final wishes. As the police led my family members away, Patricia turned to hurl one final accusation at me. The words died on her lips when she saw me holding Eleanor's silver locket. In that moment, she finally understood. Eleanor had been several steps ahead of them all along. The months following the dramatic courtroom confrontation brought both resolution and difficult transitions. The criminal investigation proceeded swiftly, bolstered by Eleanor's meticulous documentation. Patricia and Bradley faced felony charges for financial elder abuse and conspiracy, eventually accepting a plea deal that included restitution, probation, and community service. Trevor received a lighter sentence in exchange for testimony against his parents. Raymond entered court-mandated rehabilitation as part of his probation requirements. Standing in Eleanor's garden one spring morning, watching the tulips she'd planted emerge, I felt conflicted emotions. Vindication, yes, but also profound sadness. The inheritance had revealed my family's true character, just as Eleanor had warned it might. No amount of money could replace the family bonds that had been irrevocably broken. "What do I do now, Grandma?" I whispered to the gentle breeze that rustled the garden chimes she'd loved. The answer came not in words, but in inspiration. Eleanor had built her business not just for profit, but to create something meaningful. I could do the same with her legacy. Working with Gerald Fisher, Eleanor's attorney, I established the Eleanor Matthews Foundation for Elder Care and Protection. Using a significant portion of the inheritance, the foundation would fund better training for elder care providers, legal assistance for seniors facing financial exploitation, and community programs to reduce isolation among the elderly. Eleanor would have approved, Gerald said when I shared the plan. She always said money should work for good. The foundation's first initiative was partnering with the local police department to create an elder fraud prevention unit. The second was establishing a scholarship program for nursing students specializing in geriatric care. Healing my own emotional wounds proved more challenging than managing the inheritance. I found support in an unexpected place, a group for family estrangement survivors. Twice monthly meetings with others who understood the unique pain of family betrayal helped me process my grief and anger. Blood doesn't always mean loyalty, our group facilitator often reminded us. Family is ultimately about who acts like family. Gradually, I reconnected with Eleanor's true friends, people who had genuinely cared for her, not her money. Margaret, her bridge partner of 20 years, shared stories I'd never heard about Eleanor's younger days. James, her business mentor, revealed how Eleanor had quietly funded college educations for employees' children. These relationships helped me see more dimensions of the remarkable woman who had shaped my life. 6 months after the trial, while renovating Eleanor's home to make it truly my own, I discovered one final gift. Behind a loose brick in the garden wall, Eleanor's favorite thinking spot was a waterproof container holding a handwritten letter dated just weeks before her death. My dearest Miranda, if you're reading this, then the storm has come and hopefully passed. I've watched my children and grandson make increasingly troubling choices over the years, choices driven by entitlement rather than effort. I enabled this behavior for too long, believing that family loyalty required financial support regardless of merit. You showed me a different kind of loyalty, one based on love and respect rather than expectation and obligation. Your care during my final years gave me more joy than all my business success combined. I've prepared for the battle that will likely follow my passing. The evidence in the safe should protect you from their schemes. Use it if necessary, but don't let bitterness consume you afterward. Holding on to anger only gives them continued power over your happiness. Remember that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in how we touch others' lives. You've always understood this intuitively. It's why you deserve not just my financial legacy, but the chance to extend my life's purpose. Build something meaningful, Miranda. Choose your family wisely going forward. Surround yourself with those who celebrate your success rather than resent it. And know that wherever I am, I'm incredibly proud of the woman you've become. All my love. Eleanor, her words brought both tears and clarity. The inheritance had never been the true gift. Eleanor's real legacy was the wisdom she had shared, the values she had demonstrated, and the love she had given unconditionally. The business thrived under my guidance, informed by Eleanor's principles of ethical leadership. I implemented profit sharing for employees and expanded the company's sustainable practices. Matthews Textile Enterprises became known not just for quality products, but for exceptional workplace culture. My personal life gradually rebuilt around authentic connections. I sold my marketing consultancy to focus fully on the textile business and foundation work. The community that had once shunned me during the wool contest slowly recognized the truth as the criminal cases made headlines. Most meaningful was meeting people who valued me for myself, not my inheritance. A volunteer at the foundation, Lisa, became a trusted friend. My business mentor, Robert, provided guidance without agenda. Even a few distant relatives from Eleanor's Scottish side reached out, sharing family history with no financial motives. 2 years after Eleanor's passing, I hosted a memorial garden dedication at the local senior center funded by the foundation. As the sun set over the newly planted roses, Eleanor's favorites, I reflected on the journey from betrayal to rebuilding. The inheritance that my family had fought so desperately to control had ultimately created more good in the community than their greed ever would have allowed. Eleanor's foresight had transformed what could have been merely wealth transfer into a force for positive change. My life had taken an unexpected path, but I was finally at peace with it. Eleanor had known all along what truly mattered. Family isn't defined by DNA, but by actions. Legacy isn't about money, but about impact. And sometimes the most valuable inheritance is the wisdom to recognize true character, both in others and in ourselves. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's true character was revealed through their actions rather than their words? How did it change your perspective on that relationship? Share your story in the comments below. If this tale of standing up for what's right against all odds resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over betrayal. And remember, family is about love and respect, not entitlement. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may you build your own legacy based on authenticity and integrity.